Thank you for joining us. You're listening to Eye on the Valley right here on CIVL 101.7 FM. Thank you for joining us today. I have the great privilege to be joined by the newly minted Conservative MLA of British Columbia, Bruce Banman. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Well, it's always a pleasure, Sir G.
And my very first question for you is, can you please share the factors that led to your decision to switch from the BC United Party to the Conservative Party? Were there any specific differences of opinion that led you to change your affiliation?
I would say what happened was, and I'd have to go back and let me tell you, I got to do a little history on this so that people can get some context. My family, my grandparents on my father's side, were Mennonites that escaped the Russian Revolution, actually not far from where the invasion took place in Ukraine, again, just recently. And they escaped. Canada opened up its arms and allowed them to worship in the way that they felt was right for them. They were able to pass their values and teach their children the way they wished. And they also were always proud to be able to not only vote, but have the ability to speak what was on their minds, whether other people agreed with that or not. The freedom of speech, which I hold so dear to my heart, and it's personal. So what was happening, and what a lot of people don't understand, is with my party and with others for that matter, there are what's called whipped votes, where the party actually tells you how to vote. Now, in some cases, I can understand there are party lines that are followed, but then there gets to be an excessive point of that, and it becomes what is politically convenient or politically correct or the political winds of the day. And there was one particular vote where I was told, if you're not in favor of this vote, you need to leave the building. Don't be here when the vote is counted. And I come back to, I did leave the building, and I found it both humiliating and in retrospect, I wished I had stayed, and in spite of what I had been told, had stood up and voted with my conscience. Mm-hmm. And where I come to this is, I need to be able to speak about the concerns of those who voted for me and put their trust in me to fight for their issues. And when you are being told how to vote, or even down to the point of what topics you can talk about and how to talk about them, that becomes very, very difficult. And I struggled with that. What the BC Conservative Party, or the Conservative Party of British Columbia, has said and promised is many, many more free votes and the ability to speak my mind in the legislature about concerns in my riding. And let me explain why that's important. Mm-hmm. So if you take a look at the needs of Northern British Columbia, which is in the natural gas and petroleum industry, the interest of the residents up there may be drastically different from what is happening in the Lower Mainland or Vancouver and what they think is important. The forestry concerns and natural resource sectors in certain provinces, certain areas of the province, would be drastically different than, say, what was happening in Victoria or on Vancouver Island in parts of it. And the ability for an MLA to speak up on those concerns in those ridings becomes very, very important, whether I agree with them personally or not. And that, to me, is the hallmark of democracy. And I think British Columbians are looking for something different, where local politicians, locally elected MLAs, can speak on behalf of what's important to those areas. Here we have a large agricultural base. There are those that think that dairy and poultry farming should be shut down. Yet that is the major economic driver of this riding, is agriculture. And those two sectors alone provide an awful lot of jobs and also auxiliary jobs that are in that industry. So those issues here will be very, very important. And I now, through this move over to the BC Conservative Party, have the ability to speak on behalf of the issues in my riding and honor the vote that people took when they voted for me to be able to do so. And I don't think that most British Columbians are aware of that, but I think that they're starting to wake up that is one of the major reasons why people are turning their backs on democracy and think it doesn't work.
And Bruce, if I may, as you know, we just a couple years ago faced the Fraser Valley flooding, and you played an active role in the legislature speaking for that Fraser Valley region. And your new leader and your new leader's policies may differ dramatically against your policies on climate change, on harm reduction, and on student rights in universities and schools. How do you make that happen between you and your new party when the platform may differ so dramatically between what you believe and what the party believes?
Well, you've wrapped an awful lot of things into one area there, and I'm not so sure that about on whether I agree with everything you said. But what did happen is John did speak out about climate. And in his area, that's a major forestry area and ranching area. Mm-hmm. So that's one of those things that I'm talking about. Now, do I necessarily agree? I'll go back to the premise. I may not agree with what someone says, but I definitely agree that they have the right to say it. And sometimes that makes it a little awkward. And there are going to be differences of opinions on nuances throughout the province. That mm-hmm. does not necessarily mean that everyone in the party necessarily agrees or disagrees with that. And I think we need to get away from this all or nothing attitude that's been prevalent of late, that everybody has to be on the same page about every little bit and every little bit of nuance. I jokingly say, I've been married a long time. My wife and I don't agree on everything. And so how can you expect every different region of the province to agree politically on policy when you bring it home? Like it's ridiculous to think that everybody has to agree on the thing. And what's happening now in politics is if there's one little bit that's outside of the step, that everybody jumps on the bandwagon and tries to brand you or announce you and say you're a denier, you're a hater, you're a this, you're a that, and it's not helpful. And not only that, it's illogical. And I think by talking through these issues, you come to a better consensus, and keeping in mind that there are regions of the province that have totally different things that are important to them. And I believe that people want their locally elected official to be able to go to the floor of the legislature and freely bring up what's important to them, whether or not that's in 100% agreement with party lines or not.